It's always a treat for me to come to the Ramakrishna Monastery, Trabuco Canyon. It feels like holy ground to me. And yesterday I came, I just felt like I'm walking on holy ground. This is a holy place. What is it that draws us here? As some of you know, I joined this monastery in 1997. I was here for 5 years before going to other monasteries and other centers of our order. And I also spent 6 months in 1996 trying to decide whether I was going to join or not. And we celebrate now 75 years of this monastery. And it is a holy place. What makes a place holy? What makes this place holy? Surely it is the beautiful environment, the trees. It's away from the bustle of the city. Many of us maybe don't even get a cell phone signal here unless we have Verizon, because that's a Verizon tower. But if we don't have a Verizon, we won't get a signal. We're cut off. And there's this scenic beauty, this kind of European style monastery architecture. But I think that's not the main thing. What makes a place holy is the people who have lived here, and the people who live here now, and the people who visit, all of you, the people who bring their hearts, their prayerful hearts to this place. Sri Ramakrishna says, "Know for certain, my children, that there is God's manifestation where people have practiced for a long time austerities, japa, that means repeating the mantra, japa, meditation, steady abstraction of mind, prayer, and worship, to have his vision, to practice those spiritual disciplines to see God. In that place," says Sri Ramakrishna, God manifests. He says, their thoughts of God have become solidified there, so to speak, on account of their devotion. That is why holy thoughts and visions are so easily attained there. So this place has been dedicated since its founding, actually since it was built in 1942, and then it was dedicated as the Ramakrishna Monastery in 1949. Since it was built, it has been dedicated to the spiritual quest, to the search for God, to the search for something higher, to the search for our true divine self. And this place has become a spiritual home for seekers of God, of all traditions, because people of all traditions feel comfortable here. They feel that this is a spiritual home. And this is a place where the monks who have lived here and who live here hold aloft the audacious idea, Sri Ramakrishna's audacious idea, that God can be seen. We don't simply need to believe in God, we can see God. That is the audacious claim of Vedanta. And many have practiced hard here to see God, to realize God. As I mentioned, when I first came in 1996, I was wondering whether I was going to join. And Swami Tadatmananda was here. Swami Tadatmananda left an indelible mark on this monastery with his paintings. All the paintings that are here in this monastery were painted by Swami Tadatmananda, including some were painted while I was here. And moreover, he left an indelible mark on the hearts of those who got to know him through his self-effacing holiness. He had a holiness which was clothed in perfect ordinariness. He was just a guy, and yet he wasn't just a guy. He was a holy man. And he asked me at some point, we were down there by the shrine and doing some weeding or something, and he asked me, "So what do you think of this place?" And I said, in my youthful enthusiasm and naivete, I said, "I'm just trying to figure out if this is a good place for me to realize God," as if it was going to happen tomorrow or something, or in the next week. And he smiled, a kind of indulgent smile, and then he said, "You get glimpses. You get glimpses. How amazing. This man who was never one to reveal anything personal about his spiritual life. He gave me a little glimpse into his experience. He said, "You get glimpses." And I dare say he's not the only person who could say that. So what is it that makes this place holy? It is dedicated to the spiritual quest in the name of a spiritual giant, Sri Ramakrishna. There are daily practices performed here. Pilgrims come to pray, to meditate, to visit the shrine, to walk the shrine trail, to appreciate the divine light that shines in all spiritual traditions. And some people here even have attained to a level of purity, a level of holiness that they can say, you get glimpses. There's something more. In the heart of this monastery, Sri Ramakrishna is installed as a living presence and is offered worship every day. The shrine here, that cave, most of you probably have visited our shrine. If you haven't visited our shrine, I encourage you to do so. It is a unique shrine. It is like a cave. It has a dome and it's dark and quiet inside, and inside is installed Sri Ramakrishna as the living presence, the teacher, the guru through whom the divine grace is flowing in our tradition. And the life of this monastery revolves around that shrine. And every day, 3 times a day, service is performed there. And every day, the monks go there to meditate, to pray, to repeat the holy mantra, to repeat the name of God. And it is like the cave at the very heart of this place. It was designed by Gerald Hurd, who built this place in 1942, as a meditation room. So it's always been dedicated to meditation. And it was consecrated to Sri Ramakrishna in 1949. So that is to me one reason why this place feels so holy. Though we may not know it, but it's dedicated to the divine, and there's daily worship performed here. Now, just as there is a cave at the heart of this monastery, so the Upanishads, our Vedanta scriptures, the ancient texts of Vedanta which proclaim the divinity of the self, the divinity of who we are, and the absolute primacy of the divine reality, the all-pervading divine. The Upanishads claim that there is a heart, there is a cave in the heart of our being. There is a cave deep in the heart of our being, often called the guha, the cave. What, a cave in our being? Yes. And that, they say, is where the divine is found. Now, the Upanishads are the records of the illumined sages of yore. And the illumined sages of today verified, yes, the divine can be found within. And a cave is a beautiful image for envisioning how that divine is to be sought within. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. There is a conversation between a great spiritual teacher and his disciple, which is immortalized in one of our Upanishads, the Katha Upanishad. And the teacher's name is Yama, the king of death. And his disciple's name is Nachiketa, a young boy who had this tremendous faith. He wanted to know. He wanted to know what happens after death. Do people, when they die, is that it? Is it all over? Or is there something that remains? Do we remain? So Yama, of course, teaches him the teachings of the Atman, the immortal soul that we are. And he says in this beautiful, there are Sanskrit verses, I'm going to chant a little bit because I love this poetry. Maybe you can catch something of the rhythm of the beauty of it. Tam durdarsham gudhamanupravishtham guhahitam gahvarishtham puranam adhyatma yogadhigamena devam matva dhiro harshishokau jahati etat shrutva samparigrihya martyah pravrihya dharmyam anumetamapya Samodate modaniyam hi labdva vivritam sadmanachiketa sammanye. So what does it mean? I'll read a translation. The wise, realizing through meditation the timeless self, beyond all perception, hidden deep within in the cave of the heart, leave pain and pleasure far behind. Those who know they are neither body nor mind, but the immemorial self, the divine principle of existence, find the source of all joy and live in joy abiding. I see the gates of joy are opening for you, Nachiketa. So the teacher is telling Nachiketa where to seek for God, how to seek for God. He says there are people who have realized in the cave of their heart, it's very subtle. Our true self is very subtle, hidden deep within, as if there is a cave deep within us. And there in that cave is shining our true self. And when we touch that, when we know that that is who we are, then our ordinary experience, which is characterized by both pleasure and pain, and we seem to be buffeted in life from one to the other. We get a little bit of pleasure and we think, yes, I want that. And then a wave of pain comes and takes us away. And so we're swinging back and forth between pleasure and pain and pleasure and pain. And when we touch that, when we know who we are, pleasure and pain fall beside the way because we have touched the source of true joy, which is our own self, which is the divine. And touching that, we live in joy. We rejoice. We live in joy abiding. So, why then, if this is the case, is it so hard? Why don't we feel that all the time? If the divine is right here, if my true nature is divine, why don't we all see it? It's a kind of a mystery. But Nachiketa gives a hint. He says, he tells Nachiketa, Paranchikani vyatranat swayambhu tasmat parang pashyati namtaratman kaschidhirah pratyagatmanamaikshat avritta chakshur amritatvamichan. So he should know. I better check mine to make sure mine is off too. Mine is off, okay. So Yama says, he describes our experience, our daily experience of our senses. And what do our senses do? They're all pointed outwards. We want to see everything outside with our eyes. We're listening to all the sounds. We're smelling the smells. Is anything in the kitchen smelling good? Tasting, touching, everything is external. So it's as if God damaged the senses by making them go outwards, says Yama. He says the Lord, the self-existent Supreme Lord, inflicted an injury upon the senses, upon the sense organs, in creating them all pointing outwards with all these outgoing tendencies. Therefore, we perceive the external world, and we don't perceive our true self, our inner self. But then he says, a rare person, a wise person, someone who is discerning, someone who wants immortality, someone who longs to know his or her own true self. What does such a person do? Avritta chakshuhu. Chakshuhu is the eyes, and avritta is like covering the eyes. The idea is that those who long to touch their own true immortal self, they have to withdraw for a time, cover their eyes, as it were, close their ears, figuratively, not literally necessarily, turn that power of perception, turn it within. Let it fall down deep into the cave of our heart. And then we behold our true self, that inner self. I think that's one reason why our shrine here is so attractive, because it is like a cave, and it's dark, it's quiet. When we go in there, our senses are naturally stilled. There's not much to look at, except for a few cushions strewn about, and if it's really dark, you hardly see anything. By the by, if you do go there, be careful, there's a step that goes down, and if it's bright out and it's dark inside, there have been people who have fallen flat on their face. They go in and they see this picture of Ramakrishna, right, shining. They, Ramakrishna. And they go forward, not knowing there's a step down, and they go, boom, and they fall right down at the Lord's feet. Well, it's a good place to fall, but better not to fall in the shrine. So, but we feel protected there. We have this dome of protection. It's quiet. It's easy to, and of course the vibrations have been built up through the decades of worship and prayer. And so naturally the mind starts to go within, which is what meditation is all about. Caves in our Hindu tradition have a special place. And there are so many stories of caves in the Himalayas and the yogis who are dwelling there. And sometimes I also used to think, if I could find a cave in the Himalayas and meditate there. Of course, it's not so easy as it sounds. You have to climb up and it's cold and there's not much food, and caves, it's not like a nice warm cave. Usually they're a little bit cold, so you have to be ready to bear those things. But yogis and monks, seekers, meditators, saints have sought out these mountain caves and glades of forest deep since time immemorial. Why? What's so great about a cave? Well, they're secluded, they're hidden, they're away from the bustle of the world. Those who really want to find their self, they're not concerned about what other people think of them. They want to hide themselves. They want to just realize their self. And there's natural beauty in the mountains. It's very sattvic. Our minds easily become calm. Our minds start to feel pure. The pure mind reflects the divine. And a cave it's protected from the elements. If it snows outside, the cave is actually warm. If it's hot outside, the cave is cold. And it's like a womb in the heart of Mother Earth. We feel surrounded, we feel protected. The senses are stilled. It's a great place. Caves can be wonderful places to meditate. And Swami Vivekananda himself loved mountain caves. He always was looking for mountain caves to meditate in, and he found some. He did spend time in different caves, even several months at a time in India. And much later, he was in France visiting Mont Saint-Michel, which is an ancient, an old medieval church and monastery and dungeon also. And or maybe it was converted into a dungeon or something. I forget the history of it. But seeing those dungeon cages of the medieval prisoners, he was heard to say under his breath, "What a wonderful place for meditation." We see a prison cell and we think, oh God, what hell for him. Wonderful place for meditation. And he was heard to have said once, "Oh, I know I have wandered over the whole earth, but in India I have looked for nothing save the cave in which to meditate." But paradoxically, his life was not meant for that. And his disciple, Sister Nivedita, the Irish woman who went to India and dedicated her life to his work, she wrote about him, when he was near Almora during his wandering days. He passed some months in a cave overhanging a mountain village. Only twice have I known him to allude to this experience. Once he said, "Nothing in my whole life ever so filled me with a sense of work to be done. It was as if I were thrown out from that life in caves to wander to and fro in the plains below." It's because he was not a seeker like us. He was a perfected soul. He had come with a work to do. He had come with a message to give. He was a messenger. So his life was not meant just to go and meditate in a cave. He could have done it, except that force that impelled him to deliver his message, to put in a lever for the good of humanity, as he put it. And he also said to someone, this is interesting, it is not the form of his life that makes a sadhu, that makes a monk. For it is possible to sit in a cave and have one's whole mind filled with the question of how many pieces of bread will be brought to one for supper. Maybe some devotee, some villager would come to the cave knowing there's a monk there. That's one of the glories of India, is this recognition and appreciation of that impulse to give up everything and seek God. Here people say, oh, they're crazy. In India they say, oh, they're a saint or a saint in the making. And so they'll bring a little something to eat at least. And Swamiji, apparently, even though he was a perfected soul, he found that time sitting in that cave thinking about, I wonder how much bread I'm going to get tonight. So that's an important lesson. And he asks us, how to attain purity living this life? Shall we all go to the forest caves? What good would it do? If the mind is not under control, it is no use living in a cave, because the same mind will bring all disturbances there. We will find 20 devils in the cave, because all the devils are in the mind. If the mind is under control, we can have the cave anywhere, wherever we are. So this is the teaching. We have that cave everywhere, actually. It's the cave of the heart. That's the cave that we need to find. We need to uncover it. We need to discover it. And then we can enter that cave. Some of the traditional temples in India, especially I'm thinking of some of the enormous temples in South India, which have lasted for centuries, perhaps even for millennia. There's something wonderful about them. They're maybe covering several acres, and there are a number of walls around the temple. And there are these giant gates with huge towers covered with ornate statuary, brightly colored, by the way, painted all kinds of bright colors. And it's very active and eye-catching. And then you go through the first gates, and then it starts to get a little bit more concentrated. And there are these concentric courtyards, as it were, and one has to pass through a gate and then walk around a long hallway with lots of columns, and then you enter another gate and go a little closer to the center of the compound. And then you have to walk some more through another courtyard, and then you enter yet another gate. And gradually you approach closer and closer until we reach finally the Sanctum Sanctorum, the Holy of Holies. It's called the Garbhagriha. Now, Garbha means the womb. It's that room which is the womb of the temple. And in that holy place, the deity is actually enshrined. There's a murti, some kind of image in which the divine has been invoked, the divine presence has been invoked and is worshipped daily. And surprisingly, that room is quite small. Though the temple is huge, maybe acres, but the room is small. It's smaller than the room we're in. It could be maybe as big as this little platform up here, or just a little bigger than that. And this design of these ancient temples mirrors our human experience, our human makeup. Just as we pass through successive layers of the temple to come to the divine presence installed deep in the heart of the temple, so we also have different layers to our being. Vedanta calls them koshas, or sheaths, and they are surrounding and covering and obscuring our true self. So there's the sheath of the physical body is considered the first one. This one made of food, it's said to be made of food, just the physical body. Then there's more subtle than that is an energetic body. And more subtle than that is a mental body. And then there's the subtler body of intellect. And finally, there's the very subtlemost body of the ego. And it is beyond these 5 sheaths, beyond these 5 gates, as it were, that we come face to face with the divine. So in these temples, when we enter, we find this small room with this completely dark, illuminated by oil lamps flickering in the darkness. And priests may be chanting holy mantras. And it's hard to describe the atmosphere of holiness and purity when you reach the sanctorum of one of these temples. There's a kind of exaltation of spirit one feels, uplifted, and one feels that God is true and God is real because I feel the presence of God. I'm in the presence of the divine. And such a visit to a temple is really like the process of meditation in a sense, where just as we pass through these different gates in the temple, we withdraw our mind from the body. We cover the eyes, as it were. We turn the senses within. We start to sink down deeper until we finally can enter the cave of the heart and taste that same exaltation deep within. There's a funny story told by Sri Ramakrishna about a temple, a village temple. There was a young man, he says, in a village, a young man named Padmalochan. Now, there's always, some of the names are so beautiful. Padmalochan actually means, Padma is lotus, and Lochan is eyes. So he has lotus eyes. It's a name of God. And I used to think that it was the petals of the lotus flower that are referred to. I didn't know until I saw it here. A lotus leaf, if you turn over a lotus leaf, on the back of it, there's this eye shape. It's a beautiful shape. It's a very long kind of eye shape on the back of a lotus leaf. Check it out. I don't know if the lotuses are... Do we still have lotuses here? We'll have to see. So Padmalochan, but he's Bengali. And Bengalis will abbreviate everything. First of all, they say, instead of Padmalochan, they say Paddalochan, Poddo. And so his nickname was Podo. So they would call him Podo. I'm not sure what it means, but it's a nickname for him. So he was called Podo. And there was, in this village, an old temple. It was completely dilapidated and broken down. And there was no holy image in the temple. And trees and other plants were growing on the temple walls. Perhaps if you've been to India, you've seen in old buildings, a seed of a ashwatha tree has fallen on a building somewhere, and gradually it's growing into a tree, and the roots are taking over the building, and ultimately the building is held up by the roots of the tree and breaking it apart at the same time. So this temple was something like that. There were bats living inside, and the floor was covered with dust and bat droppings. Gross, right? And so nobody visited the temple. Well, one day after dusk, the villagers heard the sound of a conch shell from the direction of the temple. The holy conch is blown at the time of the service, this beautiful sound which pierces and it lets people know worship is going on, come, come. So they thought perhaps someone had installed an image in the shrine and was performing the evening worship. Young and old alike, men and women, they all came running to the temple to see the service. Well, the door was closed, so one of them crept up and carefully, slowly, quietly pushed open the door. What did he see? He saw Padmalochan, Podo, standing in the corner, blowing the conch. But nothing had been cleaned. The floor was full of rat droppings. There was no image in the shrine. Everything was the same as it was. Just Podo blowing the conch there. And he puts it, Bhom bhom shank bajache. That bhom, in the Bengali language, they use these onomatopoeic words. Bhom bhom means he's blowing the conch. And so then this guy shouted to Podo, "You have set up no image here within the shrine, O fool! Blowing the conch, you simply make confusion worse confounded. Day and night, 11 bats scream there incessantly." So Sri Ramakrishna had a commentary on this, of course. He said, there's no use in merely making a noise. If you want to establish the deity, in the shrine of your heart. See, he's using this as an example for the shrine of our heart, the cave of our heart. If you want to establish the deity in the shrine of your heart, if you want to realize God, first of all, purify your mind. Clean up all the bad droppings. In the pure heart, God takes his seat. One cannot bring the holy image into the temple if the droppings of bats are all around, right? We say we have a holy picture. We want to clean the place where we're going to put that before we put that image, that holy image there. The 11 bats are our 11 organs. 5 organs of action, 5 organs of perception, and the mind. The 11 bats squawking and flying all around. First of all, invoke the deity. Then give lectures to your heart's content. First of all, dive deep. Plunge to the bottom and gather up the gems. Then you may do other things. But nobody wants to plunge. This was his lament, that he found very few people who really want God. He said, nobody wants to plunge. People are without spiritual discipline and prayer, without renunciation and dispassion. They learn a few words and immediately start to deliver lectures. So there are 2 angles to this, it seems to me. Because on the one hand, as we've been discussing up till now, the divine is always already shining in our hearts. That is always and ever our true nature. Yes, the divine is here, shining right here. And yet, on the other hand, we are not aware of it. There is too much distraction. The bats are flying. The bat droppings are everywhere. How can we find the deity? So from this standpoint, we can say that, well, God isn't sitting in my heart because it's not clean. I haven't cleaned the altar yet. I need to clean the altar first. Then the Lord will come and sit here. So first purification, and then we install the deity. So this is a reference to the process of consecrating a temple. When we consecrate a temple, of course, we bring an image in the Hindu tradition. Typically, an image is as a symbol of the divine, a channel through which we worship the infinite, formless reality, but still envisioned as a form. So we have something our minds can hold on to. And we clean it, we do a special worship. We ask the divine, be here, be present here. And actually, this same process is followed every day here in this monastery when the daily worship is done. Because in our process of worship, we do the same thing for our own being. And it's a wonderful process to learn, a practice. It's fairly simple, but through the chanting of several prayers and mantras and several gestures and visualization, we completely burn up all the impurities of our body, and then we divinize our body, and then we invoke the divine. We ask the divine to come and sit right here on our hearts, and we put our hand on our hearts and we say, come here, be present here in my heart, and then we worship the divine in the heart. So this is the practice of Bhuta Shuddhi and Jivanyasa, which sometime we can have a class on that. It's a wonderful practice of how in our tradition we invoke the divine in the heart. Though, of course, at the same time, it's always there. God is always here. But still, it makes it more real for us when we do this practice. And we say, yes, now I have actually installed the Lord here. He's really here. Hold him here in the cave. Worship him. I'd like to share, just touch on another beautiful verse that we chant here daily. We chanted it just this morning. I'll read the Sanskrit also. The first verse of this hymn, this prayer of Sri Chaitanya. It's so beautiful. Cheto darpanam arjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam Shreya kairava chandrika vitaranam Vidyavadhu jivanam Anandam buddhi vardhanam pratipadam purnamrita swadanam sarvatmasnapanam param vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. Chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quench that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. O name, stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. O self, drown deep in the waves of his bliss, chanting his name continually, tasting his nectar at every step, bathing in his name, that bath for weary souls. So this is a great secret of purification. How do we purify the heart? This idea of the heart as a mirror. We've been talking about the heart as a cave. Now we have this additional image of the heart as a mirror. And that mirror reflects to us the divine. But it's covered with dust. How do we dust the mirror? Like this, by chanting the holy name, by repeating a mantra. We wipe the dust, we polish the mirror of the heart so we may see the reflection of the divine. And it's particularly the next image which I love so much, this Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. There's a certain kind of lotus which blooms at night when the moonlight shines on it. And it's this lotus that's referred to here, stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. The heart as a lotus. And a lotus, if it's closed, it looks like this. Well, it may have a nice shape, but there's nothing too special about it. But when it opens, what beauty, what glory, what fragrance. It's one of the most beautiful, exquisite of flowers. So like that, our heart may be still like this. But as the name streams down in moonlight, that gentle light of nectar, of bliss, of peace, it falls on our hearts. And the heart begins to open. And it blossoms like a lotus. And when the lotus blossoms, what do we get? We get the beauty, we get the fragrance, we get love. Our heart becomes a burning center of love, of awakened consciousness. So that is this purification of heart. I should mention that we're not talking about the physical heart here. I think that was clear all along. But it just struck me I should mention that. We're not talking about that organ of muscle and blood and that's working constantly from the day we are born until the day well before we are born, after how many months? 3 months or something in the womb, 3 or 4 months, the heart starts pumping until the day we die. That heart keeps going. It is the very center of our physical being, of our body. But when we're talking about the spiritual heart, it's something that we have to find. It is at the core of our beings. Typically is said to be found in the region of the heart, in the region of the center of the chest. We get a little hint of it when we feel deep love, right? Where do we feel that deep love? That is a hint for finding our spiritual heart. And we've been talking about it as a cave, or we can also think of it as a lotus, that we have to let it blossom, let it open. And the heart is where the soul, our individual divine self, and the divine, the supreme soul, the Paramatman, the all-pervading infinite reality, that is the place where these two meet. It is like the nexus between our individual self and the supreme, the absolute. And there's a verse, another verse in this Katha Upanishad, which I've been referring to again and again. And interestingly, he says there are two in this cave, in this cave of the heart, in this cavity of the heart, there are two who are there. Who are they? Our individual soul and the Supreme Soul. And let me read a very poetic translation of this verse. In the secret cave of the heart, two are seated by life's fountain. The separate ego drinks of the sweet and bitter stuff. That pleasure and pain again. Liking the sweet, disliking the bitter, while the Supreme Self drinks sweet and bitter, neither liking this nor disliking that. The ego gropes in darkness, while the self lives in light. So declare the illumined sages and the householders who worship the sacred fire in the name of the Lord. So actually, our individual self, which we call the Jivatman, that means we have the Jivatman is immortal, our almost immortal self, which goes through this whole life, and when the body ends, we leave the body. Our self leaves the body, and we enter another body. But there's another self, the Supreme Self, the Paramatman, which is all-pervading, which shines in every heart. And gradually, as we purify, as we get closer to that Supreme Self, that sense of individuality, that I am a separate person, I'm me, I'm Swami, and I joined the Trabuco Monastery and all that, and that starts to melt away. And we start to touch our true individuality, that in us which is indivisible, our individuality which is indivisible. That is the divine, the Paramatman, the Supreme Self. So, I'm wondering whether I'm overwhelming you with Upanishads, because there's one more, compelling idea in a different Upanishad now, the Chandogya Upanishad, where it describes the process of meditation. And the sage says, there is in this city of Brahman, calling our body as a city of Brahman. Why is it the city of Brahman? Because Brahman, the divine, is enshrined here. So this is like a city with all its different parts and ministers, and the senses are like the different ministers. And here is the ruler of that city, and that is Brahman, is the divine. In this city of Brahman, there is an abode, the small lotus of the heart. And within that is a small space. Now, what exists within that small space, that is to be sought after. That is what we are to understand. So it's describing again this cave, as it were, this cave of the heart. Within the lotus, there is a space. And within that very small space, that is where we find that nexus between the divine. And then the Upanishad acknowledges, someone might ask, it's so small. So what? What is there in that small space? You say there's an abode, a small lotus in the city of Brahman. That small space, that small akasha is the Sanskrit term that is used. What is there in that? What is there? Why should we desire for that? And then this is the reply. So the reply is, as far as this great akasha, this great space extends, means the space that we see, look up in the sky at night, and we can't put a limit to space. It seems to be infinite. And the more astronomers put up their telescopes in the above the atmosphere, in the satellite telescopes, the more we find that the space was bigger than we thought. And it goes on, and goes on and goes on, and in the darkest part of the sky, they find thousands of galaxies. So it's overwhelming. In that, so far as this great space extends, so far extends this space within the heart. Both heaven and earth are contained within this. Both fire and air, both sun and moon, both lightning and stars, and whatever belongs to a person in this world. And whatever does not, All that is contained here. So the idea is that in this small space which is deep within that lotus, which is deep within the cave of our hearts, we can find everything. Everything is here. Once we touch that, we find everything is connected. Every evening at this monastery, we sing a hymn to the embodied divine, composed by Swami Vivekananda about his master, Sri Ramakrishna, but it's a universal hymn. It can be sung to any God man or God woman. In fact, the song the translation starts, "Breaker of this world's chain," because the divine teacher is one who breaks our shackles and leads us to freedom. And I heard that in Calcutta, there's a Christian church where they sing this same hymn to Jesus. This is a profound hymn, and it's not specific to any one great teacher. But this song it's a sublime hymn of praise and adoration. And I just want to mention, towards the end, there's this beautiful line. Namo Namo Prabhu Vakyamanaktita Manovachanaikadha Jyotira Jyoti Ujjala Hridikandar Tumi Tamo Bhanjanahar Prabhu Tumi Tamo Bhanjanahar. So it means, Namo, Namo Prabhu, O Lord, my salutations to you. I worship you. I bow down to you. Vakyamanatita, you are actually beyond speech and beyond mind. You are the subtlest of the subtle and the greatest of the great. You are beyond what words can express, beyond even what thoughts can think. And yet, it is you who make thought and words and speech possible. You are the ground of consciousness. So whatever we think, whatever we speak, that all unfolds in you. And Jyotira Jyoti, Jyoti means light. Jyotira Jyoti means the light of all lights. You are the light of all lights. We see light here, and we see light, the sun is shining, and the stars at night, and the moon. Those are all reflected lights. We say the moon is reflected light, and the sun is the source light. But from the spiritual perspective, even the sun is a reflected light. And it is the light of the self, the light of the divine, that is reflected in all these lights. It is only the light divine that shines. After that, everything is shining. So Jyotira Jyoti Ujjala Hridikandara, shining in the cave of the heart, the dark cave of the heart. You are shining there. The light of the light shining in the cave of the heart. Tumi Tamo Bhanjanahar. You are the one who destroys the darkness, who dispels the darkness that's in our hearts. We chant in the translation that we give, we say, speech cannot hold thee, nor mind. Yet without thee we think not, nor speak. Come to the heart's black cave and illumine, thou light of the light. So that light is shining here in all our hearts, as the Lord, the destroyer of darkness, who is beyond our minds, beyond words, yet without whom mind and speech would not exist. And to find that light is our destiny. And we shall find it. That is one of the things I love about Vedanta. Vedanta doesn't say some people will find the light and other people will go to eternal darkness or something. Not at all. All of us are destined to know our true self. This lifetime, or maybe next lifetime. But let us try for this lifetime. Why wait for another life? In this life itself, we can know who we are. We can find the light of lights shining deep in the heart, in the cave of our hearts, and attain fulfillment, attain perfect joy and peace, and become channels of that peace, channels of that joy, channels of that light to this suffering world. So in summary today, what I wanted to share with you, this very compelling image of a cave of our heart, and how it might be useful for us to conceive of it for our meditation, to conceive of a cave of the heart, and to remember what is enshrined in that cave. We touched on the place of the cave in the Hindu tradition, the place of meditation and spiritual disciplines, and we also touched on the architecture of a Hindu temple, how it mirrors our being with a kind of cave at its heart, and how in the temple worship we install the deity on the altar and in our hearts, and how the Upanishads guide us to seek the divine, seek our own true self in this cave of our hearts, and find the Lord, the light of lights, shining there. Thank you.